They say twins share everything. A face. A voice. Sometimes even a soul. But I never thought mine would steal the woman I loved. And I never imagined she wouldn't notice when I became him. 6 months. That's how long it took for Emily to realize the man she was kissing goodnight wasn't the one she'd betrayed me with. 6 months of me living as my twin brother, Aaron, while he lived my life in blissful ignorance. 6 months of her whispering his name into my ear, her fingers tracing the same jawline, the same scar above my brow, never once questioning if something had changed. Because to her, we were interchangeable. I found out on a Tuesday. I came home early with roses and a ring in my pocket, ready to propose. Instead, I found her on our couch, her legs wrapped around my brother, her laughter spilling into his mouth like a secret she'd been keeping for months. They didn't hear me. They didn't stop. And when I finally spoke, when I asked how long, she didn't even cry. She just looked at me like I was the interruption. Like I was the mistake. Aaron didn't apologize either. He smirked. He said, "She chose me, man. Get over it." So I did something I never thought I'd do. I became him. And she never knew the difference. That should have broken me. Instead, it taught me the truth. She never loved either of us. She loved the idea of us. And now, I was going to show her what that really meant. The rain came down in sheets that October afternoon, turning the world outside into a watercolor painting bleeding at the edges. I remember thinking how fitting it was, how poetic, that I would meet her on a day when the sky itself seemed to weep with beauty. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and old books, that particular combination of scents that makes you feel like you've stepped into someone's memory rather than an actual place. It was the kind of establishment where time moved slower, where conversations lingered like perfume in the air, where people came not just for caffeine but for the atmosphere, for the feeling of being somewhere that mattered. I had ducked inside to escape the storm, shaking droplets from my jacket like a dog emerging from a lake, when I saw her. She sat in the corner booth, bathed in the amber glow of a vintage lamp that looked like it belonged in a museum, her presence so magnetic that everything else in the room seemed to fade into background noise. It was like someone had adjusted the focus on a camera, blurring everything except her, making her the only thing in the frame that mattered. Her hair fell across her face like a silk curtain, dark and glossy, catching the light in ways that made you want to reach out and touch it just to see if it was real. Her hand moved across the pages of a worn notebook with the kind of grace that made you believe in something bigger than yourself, something transcendent and beautiful and worth chasing. There was something hypnotic about watching her create, about witnessing the birth of beauty from nothing but imagination and will and the movement of her fingers across paper. She was sketching. I could see the gentle curve of her wrist, the way her fingers gripped the pencil with both tenderness and certainty, like she was coaxing something precious from the graphite and paper. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her lips pressed together in a way that suggested she was completely absorbed in her work, completely lost in whatever world she was creating on that page. I stood there longer than I should have, frozen between the doorway and the counter, unable to look away, unable to move forward or backward. There was something about her that held me in place, something that made the rest of the world disappear until there was only her and the rain and the warm glow of the coffee shop around us. Then she looked up. Her eyes found mine across the crowded room, and the world stopped. They were the color of honey under sunlight, warm and golden and impossibly deep, the kind of eyes that made you feel like you were falling even though your feet were firmly on the ground. She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable, her gaze moving across my face like she was memorizing every detail, cataloging every feature for some purpose I could not understand. And then she smiled. It was not a polite smile, not the kind strangers exchange in passing when they accidentally make eye contact and need to acknowledge the moment before looking away. It was a smile that said she saw me, really saw me, and that in that moment, I was the only person who existed in her universe. It was a smile that reached her eyes and made them crinkle at the corners, genuine and unguarded and completely devastating. "You're blocking my light," she said, and her voice was like music, playful and soft with just a hint of challenge beneath the surface, like she was testing me, seeing how I would respond to her directness. I blinked, suddenly aware that I was standing directly in front of the window, my body casting a shadow across her table, interrupting the natural light she had been using to sketch. Heat rushed to my face, embarrassment flooding through me like hot water, and I stammered an apology as I moved aside, nearly tripping over my own feet in my haste to correct my mistake. She laughed then, a sound so genuine and unguarded that it made my chest ache with something I could not quite name. It was not a mocking laugh, not the kind that makes you feel small and foolish. It was warm and inviting, like she was sharing a joke with me rather than laughing at me. Something about that laugh felt like coming home, like finding something you did not know you had been searching for your entire life. "I'm Emily," she said, extending her hand across the table. Her fingers were stained with charcoal and ink, evidence of hours spent creating worlds on paper, of hands that knew how to make beauty from nothing. I took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine, feeling the slight roughness of her fingertips from years of holding pencils and brushes, and told her my name. Her grip was firm, confident, the handshake of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted from the world. We talked until the rain stopped, until the coffee shop began to empty out, until the barista started stacking chairs with pointed looks in our direction that suggested we had overstayed our welcome. She told me about her art, about the way she saw the world in layers of color and light, about how everything could be broken down into shades and tones and the spaces between things. She spoke about beauty like it was a religion, like it was the only thing worth believing in, like it was what gave life meaning and purpose. Emily was an artist, she explained, not the starving kind struggling in dingy apartments and eating ramen every night, but the kind who had found a way to make magic pay the bills without compromising her vision or her integrity. She painted murals on weekends, transforming blank walls into stories that stopped people in their tracks, that made them pause and think and feel something they had not expected to feel. During the week, she taught art to children, filling their minds with possibility and their hands with paint, showing them that beauty was something they could create with their own fingers, that they had the power to make the world more beautiful simply by existing in it. When she talked about color theory, it sounded like poetry, each word carefully chosen, each concept a love letter to the world. She spoke about complementary colors and analogous schemes with the same passion other people reserve for religion or politics or sports teams. She made me understand that art was not just about making pretty pictures, but about seeing the world differently, about noticing things other people walked past without a second glance. I told her about my work, about the clean logic of code and algorithms, about building systems and solving problems, about creating order from chaos through nothing but logic and patience and careful planning. It felt boring in comparison, mechanical and soulless, a career chosen for practicality rather than passion. But she leaned forward with genuine interest, her eyes lighting up as I spoke, finding beauty in things I had always considered mundane. "You build the structures that hold the world together," she said, and somehow, she made it sound beautiful, made it sound important. "You make things work. You create the invisible architecture that lets the rest of us do what we do. That's a different kind of art, but it's still art. It still requires vision and creativity and the ability to see solutions where other people only see problems." We fell in love slowly at first, like a flower opening petal by petal in the morning sun, each day revealing something new, something deeper. Then all at once, like falling off a cliff, sudden and complete and impossible to stop. There were late-night walks through the city, our hands intertwined, our breath visible in the cold air, talking about everything and nothing until the sun came up. We built playlists for each other, filling them with songs that said the things we were too scared to say out loud, that captured feelings we did not yet have words for. She would paint in my apartment, surrounded by canvases and brushes, the air thick with the smell of turpentine and acrylic, while I worked on my laptop on the couch, both of us existing in comfortable silence, both of us exactly where we belonged. Sometimes she would look up from her work and catch me watching her, and she would smile, that same smile from the coffee shop, that smile that made me feel like the only person in the world. "I've never felt so seen," she whispered one night, her head resting against my chest, her hand over my heart, feeling the steady rhythm of my pulse. The words were spoken so softly I almost missed them, almost let them float away into the darkness without acknowledging their weight, their significance. But they burned themselves into my memory, a brand I would carry forever, words that would haunt me long after everything fell apart. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word that came out of her mouth. I believed that what we had was real, that it was solid, that it was something that could last. I believed that she saw me the way I saw her, completely and truly, without filters or illusions or convenient blindness to inconvenient truths. 3 months into our relationship, I introduced her to Aaron. It was at a family dinner, the kind of obligatory gathering where everyone pretended to enjoy each other's company while silently judging and keeping score, where old resentment simmered beneath polite conversation and forced smiles. I was proud to bring her, proud to show her off to my parents and my brother, proud to finally have something that was mine and mine alone, something Aaron had not claimed first. Aaron shook her hand, his grip firm, his smile wide and familiar because it was my smile too, the same expression looking back from a different body. We were twin brothers, identical in every way that mattered to other people and different in all the ways that mattered to us. Same face, same voice, same gestures and mannerisms learned from watching each other our entire lives. "She's lovely," he said to me later, clapping me on the shoulder with what seemed like genuine happiness for me, genuine approval of my choice. "You did good, brother. Really good. Hold on to this one." Emily said he seemed nice. She said he was charming, that she could see the family resemblance, that it was funny how we moved the same way and laughed the same laugh. She said it was like seeing double, like reality had glitched and created two versions of the same person. I did not think anything of it. Why would I? She was mine. He was my brother. We were family. We were supposed to trust each other, supposed to have each other's backs, supposed to protect what belonged to each other rather than covet it. But I should have known better. I should have remembered that Aaron had always wanted what I had always needed to prove he was better, more deserving, more worthy of good things. As children, he would take my toys and claim them as his own, would befriend my friends and make them his until I was the outsider in relationships I had started. He would watch me succeed at something and then find a way to do it better, faster, louder, making sure everyone knew he was the superior version of us. I thought we had grown out of that. I thought maturity had cured him of whatever darkness lived inside him that made him need to consume everything I touched, that made him unable to let me have anything without trying to take it for himself. I thought we had become actual brothers instead of competitors sharing DNA. I was wrong. And Emily, with her honey-colored eyes and her belief in beauty and her need to feel seen, she made it easy for him. She made it so easy that I never saw it coming until it was far too late to do anything but watch everything burn. Aaron started showing up more frequently after that dinner, his presence weaving itself into the fabric of our lives so gradually that I did not notice the pattern until it had already formed into something undeniable. He would text me in the middle of the afternoon, casual messages that seemed innocent on the surface, asking if I wanted to grab drinks after work, to hang out on the weekend, to catch up like we used to when we were younger and still believed brotherhood meant something. "Hey man, want to hit that bar downtown tonight? Been too long since we hung out just the two of us. Free this Saturday? Thought we could watch the game, order some food, be brothers for a change. I miss you, brother. We should make more time for each other." I thought he was finally making an effort to be brothers again, to close the distance that had grown between us over the years as our lives had taken us in different directions. I thought he missed me, missed having that twin connection we had taken for granted as children. I thought he wanted to rebuild what we had lost to adulthood and separate paths and the simple fact that we had become different people despite sharing the same face. He did not miss me. He was not interested in brotherhood or connection or rebuilding anything between us. He was circling her like a predator circling prey, patient and calculating, studying her movements and habits, waiting for the perfect moment to strike and claim what he wanted. I did not notice at first because everything with Emily seemed solid, unshakable, built on a foundation of trust and love that I believed could weather anything life threw at us. She told me she loved me every single night before we fell asleep, her voice soft in the darkness, her body warm against mine, her arm draped across my chest like she needed to maintain physical contact even in sleep. She kissed me like she meant it, like every press of her lips against mine was a promise she intended to keep, a vow she was making with her body when words felt insufficient. Our life together felt real, felt permanent, felt like the beginning of something that would last forever. We talked about the future in concrete terms rather than vague possibilities. She mentioned wanting a dog someday, a big one that could go on long walks with us. I talked about buying a house with a yard and a studio where she could paint without worrying about ventilation or space. We were building something, or at least I thought we were. But slowly, so slowly I almost missed it entirely, things began to shift beneath the surface. The changes were small at first, barely noticeable, like hairline cracks in a wall that you do not see until the whole structure begins to crumble and collapse around you. She started mentioning Aaron in passing, dropping his name into conversations like it was nothing, like it meant nothing, like it was just natural that she would be thinking about him. "Your brother's funny," she would say while stirring her morning coffee, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "He sent me this meme yesterday that made me laugh so hard I snorted. Aaron texted me today asking about that art gallery downtown. I told him which exhibits were worth seeing. He has better taste than I expected. We ran into each other at the coffee shop yesterday, what a coincidence. We ended up talking for like an hour. He's really easy to talk to, you know?" Each mention was casual, throwaway, the kind of comment that should not have raised any alarms in a normal, healthy, trusting relationship. And so I did not think anything of it at first. I trusted her completely, trusted her with my heart and my future and my belief that people meant what they said. I trusted him because he was my brother, my twin, the person who was supposed to be on my side no matter what happened in the world. I trusted the narrative I had built in my head where we were all just family, all just people who cared about each other in healthy, normal ways, where my girlfriend and my brother could be friends without it meaning anything more than surface-level friendliness. I told myself it was good that they got along, that it would have been worse if they had disliked each other, that this was what I should want. Then came the double dates, events that felt natural and innocent on the surface, the kind of thing normal couples do when they want to socialize with other people they care about. Aaron had started dating a girl named Claire, someone sweet and soft-spoken and utterly forgettable in every possible way. She worked in human resources or maybe accounting, something corporate and bland that she never talked about with any passion or interest. She seemed nice enough, pleasant and agreeable, the kind of person who faded into the background of every conversation, never quite managing to leave an impression that lasted longer than the moment you were looking at her. The four of us would go out to restaurants and bars, laughing and talking and pretending we were two happy couples enjoying each other's company, living our best lives, being young and in love and exactly where we were supposed to be. Claire would sit quietly, contributing little to the conversation, seeming content to just exist in Aaron's orbit without demanding much attention for herself. But I began to notice things. Small things at first, details that nagged at the edges of my consciousness like splinters I could not quite pull out. The way Emily would laugh louder at Aaron's jokes than she ever laughed at mine, throwing her head back with genuine delight, her whole body engaged in the act of laughing. The way she would lean in when he spoke, her body angled toward him across the table, her attention completely absorbed by whatever story he was telling, whatever observation he was making. The way she would touch his arm when making a point, her fingers lingering just a second too long on his skin, resting there with a familiarity that felt wrong, that felt like something more than casual friendliness. The way her eyes would find his across the table, holding his gaze just a beat longer than necessary, some unspoken communication passing between them that excluded me and Claire entirely. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was just old sibling rivalry playing tricks on my mind, ghosts from childhood rising up to haunt me with insecurities I thought I had buried and moved past. Aaron had always been more charismatic, more socially adept, better at making people laugh and feel comfortable. It made sense that Emily would respond to that energy. It did not mean anything. It could not mean anything. I told myself that Emily loved me, that she would never betray me, that I was imagining connections that did not exist, seeing patterns in random noise because I was looking for them rather than because they were really there. I told myself I was being the jealous, insecure boyfriend, the kind of person I had always promised myself I would never become. But deep down, in a place I did not want to acknowledge, in a corner of my mind I tried desperately to ignore, I felt it. I felt the distance growing between us, felt the coldness creeping in where warmth used to live like a welcome guest. I felt her slipping away from me, 1 degree at a time, one laugh at a time, one touch at a time, drifting toward something else, someone else, like a boat loosening from its moorings and floating out to sea. She was leaving me without ever walking out the door, without ever having the conversation, without ever admitting that anything had changed between us. It was a slow erosion, wearing away what we had built grain by grain until one day there would be nothing left but the memory of something that used to exist. One night, after she had been particularly quiet during dinner, barely touching her food and responding to my attempts at conversation with one-word answers, I asked her if everything was okay. We were sitting on the couch in her apartment, her body angled away from mine, her attention focused on her phone, scrolling through something that seemed far more interesting than my presence. Is something wrong? You've been distant lately. She looked up, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, something that looked almost like guilt, like shame, like the expression of someone caught in the middle of something they know is wrong but cannot quite bring themselves to stop. But then it was gone, replaced by that same beautiful smile that had captured me in the coffee shop all those months ago, and leaned over to kiss my forehead in a gesture that felt patronizing rather than affectionate. "You worry too much," she said, her voice gentle but somehow dismissive, like I was a child afraid of monsters under the bed rather than a man sensing something genuinely wrong in his relationship. "Everything's fine. I'm just tired from work. The kids have been crazy this week, and I've been staying up late working on that mural commission. I just need to catch up on sleep." I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted to accept the explanation and go back to pretending everything was normal, that we were still solid, that nothing had changed. But somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that I was not worrying enough, that I should be paying more attention, that I should be seeing what was happening right in front of my eyes if I would just allow myself to look without flinching away from uncomfortable truths. Because while I was working late into the night, while I was trying to build a stable future for us by putting in extra hours and taking on additional projects, while I was planning proposals and imagining a life together that extended decades into the future, Aaron was building something else entirely. He was building a connection, a bond, an intimacy that had nothing to do with family and everything to do with conquest, with taking, with proving once again that he could have anything I had and probably do it better. And Emily, with her talk of beauty and art and being seen, with her honey-colored eyes and her need to feel special, she let him. She opened the door and invited him in, and she did not think about what it would cost, did not think about who would pay the price for her choices. She just wanted to feel something, to be something, to matter to someone in a way that made her feel alive and desired and worthy of attention. I was not enough for her anymore. Maybe I never had been. Maybe I had always been a placeholder, a safe choice, a practice run before the real thing came along. And Aaron, with his charm and his confidence and his absolute certainty that he deserved everything good in the world, he was exactly the kind of chaos she craved, the kind of dangerous thrill that made her feel like she was truly living rather than just existing. I should have seen it coming. I should have protected what was mine. I should have fought harder, paid more attention, demanded answers instead of accepting easy lies. But I was blind, and I was trusting, and by the time I finally opened my eyes, by the time I finally allowed myself to see what had been obvious all along, it was already far too late to save anything at all. I found out at Aaron's birthday party, on a night that should have been about celebration and family, on a night when I arrived with a carefully wrapped gift and a genuine smile plastered across my face, still believing we were brothers in any meaningful sense of the word. Still believing Emily was mine, that what we had was real and solid and worth fighting for. Still living in a world that had already ended without my knowledge, walking through the ruins of my life without realizing everything had already burned to the ground. Aaron had rented out an entire bar downtown, one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling like captured fireflies, casting everything in a warm, flattering glow that made everyone look like the best version of themselves. The space was industrial chic, all reclaimed wood and metal accents, the kind of place that charged $15 for a cocktail and made you feel sophisticated for paying it. He had invited everyone we knew and many people we did not, friends from childhood who I barely remembered, colleagues from work whose names I had never learned, distant relatives who showed up for free drinks and the promise of drama, strangers who seemed to know Aaron in ways I did not recognize. The place was packed wall to wall, music thumping with a bass line you could feel in your chest, laughter echoing off the walls and ceiling, everyone dressed in their best clothes and ready to toast to another year of Aaron's charmed existence. Emily wore red that night. A dress I had never seen before, something sleek and form-fitting that hugged every curve of her body like it had been painted on, like it was a second skin designed specifically to draw every eye in the room. The color was bold, dramatic, the kind of red that demanded attention and refused to be ignored, the kind of red that made a statement. The dress had a low neckline and a high hem, showing skin in ways she usually reserved for intimate moments between us. When I asked her where she got it, she smiled and said she had bought it for the occasion, that she wanted to look nice for Aaron's party, that it was a special night. She said it casually, like it was perfectly normal to buy a new dress for my brother's birthday, like I should not wonder why she had never worn anything like this for me, for us, for the countless dates and dinners and special occasions we had shared. I did not ask why she had never worn it for me. I did not ask why Aaron's birthday deserved a dress I had never seen, why his celebration warranted this level of effort and attention. I just told her she looked beautiful, and I meant it, even as something uncomfortable twisted in my gut, even as warning bells rang in the back of my mind that I chose to ignore because I still wanted to believe everything was fine. The night started fine, or at least it seemed fine on the surface if you were not paying attention to the details, if you were not looking for the cracks in the facade. Drinks flowed freely from the open bar Aaron had paid for, conversations hummed with alcohol-fueled energy, people laughed and danced and celebrated like they were supposed to, like this was what happiness looked like from the outside. Aaron gave a speech about halfway through the night, standing on a chair with a beer raised high like a torch, demanding everyone's attention with the casual authority of someone who had never been ignored in his life. He thanked everyone for coming, for being part of his life, for making him the man he was today. He talked about family and gratitude and how blessed he felt to be surrounded by so many people who cared about him. People cheered and clapped, raising their glasses in tribute. I joined them, playing the role of supportive brother, never suspecting that every word out of his mouth was a lie, that even as he spoke about gratitude and family, he was actively destroying mine, actively taking what was most precious to me and claiming it as his own. But then I started to notice the way he looked at her. His eyes would find Emily across the crowded room, tracking her movements with the focus of a predator tracking prey, watching her with an intensity that made my skin crawl, that made something primal inside me recognize danger even if my conscious mind refused to acknowledge it. And when I caught her gaze, when I saw the way she looked back at him, everything inside me went cold. There was recognition in that look, familiarity that went beyond casual friendship, intimacy that spoke of shared secrets and private moments. There was something happening between them that had nothing to do with being friendly for my sake, that existed in a space that excluded me entirely. They looked at each other like lovers, like people who knew each other's bodies and souls, like people who had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. I went to the bathroom, needing a moment away from the noise and the crowd, needing space to breathe and think, to process what I was seeing without the distraction of music and conversation. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror, telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was seeing things that were not there. When I came back, they were gone. Both of them. Vanished from the crowded bar like smoke dissipating into air, like ghosts fading from view. Emily's coat was gone from the rack. Aaron was nowhere to be seen among the clusters of people drinking and talking and celebrating. Panic seized me, sharp and immediate, flooding my system with adrenaline. My heart started pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. I pushed through the crowd, searching faces, asking people if they had seen them, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Have you seen Emily? The girl in the red dress? Where's Aaron? Has anyone seen the birthday boy? Someone said they thought Emily had stepped outside for air, that she had mentioned needing a break from the noise. Someone else said Aaron had gone out for a cigarette even though I knew for a fact he did not smoke, had never smoked, thought smoking was disgusting. The lies were so transparent, so obvious, but people told them anyway because they did not know, because they could not see what was happening. My hands were shaking as I made my way to the exit, pushing through the heavy door and stepping out into the cold night air. Dread built with every step, every breath, a horrible certainty growing inside me that I was about to see something I could never unsee, learn something I could never unlearn. I found them in the alley behind the bar, hidden in the shadows between dumpsters and fire escapes, in the dirty narrow space where the city's ugliness was impossible to ignore. Her back was pressed against the brick wall, his hands gripping her waist possessively, fingers digging into the red fabric of that dress she had bought for him. Their mouths were locked together in a kiss that spoke of practice, of repetition, of something that had been happening for far longer than I wanted to imagine. They kissed like they had done this 1,000 times before, like this was routine, like they had been doing this in secret for months while I remained oblivious and trusting. Like I did not exist at all, like I was already erased from both their lives, already gone. His hand moved up her back, tangling in her hair. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer. They were completely absorbed in each other, completely lost in the moment. I did not yell. I did not move. I just stood there, frozen in place like a statue, watching the woman I loved betray me with my own brother, with the person who was supposed to protect me, supposed to have my back, supposed to be on my side no matter what happened in the world. Time stretched and warped, becoming elastic and strange. Each second lasted an eternity, each heartbeat a hammer blow to my chest, each breath a struggle against the weight crushing down on my lungs. When they finally pulled apart, when they finally came up for air, when they finally noticed my presence in the darkness about 10 feet away, Emily's face went pale. All the color drained from her skin in an instant, her eyes going wide with shock and something that might have been fear or might have been regret but definitely was not love. Her hand flew to her mouth like she could push the kiss back inside, like she could undo what I had just witnessed. But Aaron just grinned. He grinned like he had won something, like this was exactly what he wanted, like my pain was the sweetest victory he could imagine, the ultimate proof of his superiority. He did not look guilty or ashamed or sorry. He looked triumphant, satisfied, like a hunter standing over a fresh kill. "How long?" I asked. My voice did not sound like mine. It was hollow, distant, the voice of a stranger speaking through my mouth, mechanical and empty of all emotion because the emotion was too big to fit into words. 3 months, Aaron said immediately. Not her. Him. He was the one who answered, his voice filled with pride, with satisfaction, with absolute triumph. He wanted me to know. He wanted me to understand exactly how long he had been taking what was mine, exactly how thoroughly he had betrayed me. 3 months. A quarter of a year. 90 days of lies and secret meetings and me being made a fool. All that time, while I was planning a future, they were destroying it behind my back. While I was looking at engagement rings and imagining growing old together, they were meeting in secret, touching each other, kissing each other, building something that existed specifically to destroy what I had built. Emily did not deny it. She did not apologize. She did not even try to explain or make excuses or beg for forgiveness. She just stood there looking at me with pity in her honey-colored eyes, like I was something pathetic, something to be pitied rather than loved, something sad and broken that she felt sorry for but did not want anymore. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered, but the words were empty, meaningless, the kind of thing people say when they want to feel better about their choices without actually taking responsibility for them. But she did mean for it to happen. She chose it. Every secret meeting, every lie told to my face, every moment she spent with him while claiming to love me, those were choices. Active decisions she made knowing exactly what they would cost, knowing exactly who would be hurt. She chose him over me. She chose betrayal over loyalty. She chose to destroy everything we had built together, and she did it willingly, repeatedly, for 3 entire months. And in that moment, standing in that alley with the sounds of the party still echoing from inside the bar, with music and laughter providing a soundtrack to the worst moment of my life, I realized I had been a placeholder all along. A safe option while she figured out what she really wanted. A practice relationship before the real thing came along. I had never been enough for her. I had never been what she truly wanted. I was just the one who was there first, the one who was available and interested and willing to give her everything I had. But Aaron, exciting and dangerous and willing to cross lines I would never cross, he was what she had been waiting for all along. I was the safe choice. He was the real thing. And I had never stood a chance. I moved out the next day, my decision made in the cold light of morning, when the shock had worn off and only anger remained, burning in my chest like a fire that would never go out. I did not take much with me because most of what was in her apartment was hers anyway, and I did not want reminders of what we had been. Clothes hastily shoved into garbage bags, wrinkled and tangled and smelling like her laundry detergent. My laptop and charger, the tools of my trade. A few books from her shelf that I had brought over months ago. The ring I had bought 3 weeks earlier, the one I had been planning to give her on our anniversary next month, the one that now felt like a weight in my pocket, a $2,000 reminder of my own stupidity. She tried to call before I even made it to my car. My phone lit up with her name, with that photo I had taken of her laughing in the sunshine, looking beautiful and happy and like someone who would never hurt me. The phone buzzed in my hand, insistent and demanding, wanting me to answer, wanting me to give her a chance to explain something that needed no explanation. I did not answer. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then it rang again immediately. And again. Text messages started flooding in, filling my screen with words that meant nothing, apologies and explanations and pleas for me to just listen, to just understand, to just give her a chance to make me see that it was not what it looked like, even though it was exactly what it looked like. Please pick up. We need to talk. Let me explain. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. You're being childish. At least hear me out. I blocked her number after the 15th message. Watched her name disappear from my phone like she had never existed at all. Erased her contact, deleted her photos, removed every digital trace of her from my device and my life. It was surprisingly easy to make someone disappear in the modern age. A few taps and swipes and she was gone. Aaron did not call. He did not text. He did not reach out or apologize or even pretend to care about the damage he had caused, about the relationship he had destroyed. His silence was louder than any words could have been, a clear statement that he felt no guilt, no remorse, no regret for what he had done. He had taken what he wanted, and now he was simply enjoying his prize, probably laughing about how easy it had been, how thoroughly he had fooled me. My parents took his side, which should not have surprised me but somehow did anyway. When I finally answered their calls 2 days later, when I finally tried to explain what had happened at the party, they dismissed my pain with casual cruelty that took my breath away. These things happen, my mother said, her voice tired and annoyed, like I was overreacting to a minor inconvenience rather than a life-altering betrayal, like I had called to complain about bad service at a restaurant rather than the destruction of my relationship and my family. You're young. You'll get over it. You'll find someone else. There are plenty of other girls out there, my father added, his tone suggesting I should just move on and stop making such a big deal out of nothing. Emily was nice, but she's not the only woman in the world. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe you two weren't right for each other anyway. When I tried to explain about Aaron, about how my own brother had betrayed me, about how this was not just about a breakup but about family loyalty and trust, my father sighed heavily like I was exhausting him. Aaron made a mistake, he said. But he's your brother. Family is forever. Girlfriends come and go, but you only get one brother. You need to be the bigger man here. You need to forgive him and move on. Don't let a woman come between you two. My mother agreed enthusiastically. Exactly. Don't throw away your relationship with your brother over some girl. You two need to work this out. Maybe you could both just agree not to see her anymore and put this whole mess behind you. The fact that they were suggesting I be the one to forgive, that I be the one to compromise, that I be the one to sacrifice my feelings for the sake of family harmony, when I had done nothing wrong, when I was the victim in this situation, it broke something inside me that I did not know could break. I stopped talking to them after that. Told them I needed space and then stopped answering their calls entirely. Cut them off completely, blocked their numbers just like I had blocked Emily's. If they wanted Aaron, they could have him. They could have his lies and his manipulations and his absolute certainty that he deserved everything while giving nothing in return. They could have his version of events where somehow I was the problem, where I was being unreasonable for being upset about being betrayed. I lived alone in a tiny apartment across town, a cramped studio with thin walls where I could hear my neighbors arguing and making love and watching television at all hours. The plumbing was questionable, the heating inconsistent, the whole place smelling vaguely of mildew and old carpet. But it was mine, and no one there knew who I was or what had happened to me, and there was value in that anonymity. I stopped going to family dinners, stopped responding to invitations, stopped existing in the spaces we used to share. I deleted my social media accounts entirely, erased every trace of my digital existence. Unfriended mutual friends who might report back to Emily or Aaron about what I was doing, where I was living, how I was coping. I erased every photo, every post, every trace of the life I had built with Emily from the internet. For a while, I thought about disappearing completely, about leaving the city, starting over somewhere no one knew my name or my history or my shame. I looked at jobs in other states, other countries, places so far away I would never have to worry about running into them, about seeing them together, about being reminded of everything I had lost. But then I saw them together, and everything changed. It was 3 weeks after I moved out, on a random Tuesday evening when I was walking home from work, my head down and my hands in my pockets, trying not to think about anything at all. And there they were, sitting in the window of a restaurant I used to take her to, at the same table where we had celebrated her birthday 6 months earlier. She was laughing at something he said, her head thrown back in that way I used to love, her whole face lit up with joy. He was holding her hand across the table, his thumb stroking her knuckles in a gesture I recognized because I used to do the same thing. And neither of them looked guilty. Neither of them looked haunted by what they had done. Neither of them looked like people who had destroyed someone else's life for their own happiness. They looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. They looked like a couple in love, like people who had found exactly what they were looking for, like this was meant to be and the universe had simply corrected a mistake by putting them together. They looked like the happy ending in a story where I was nothing but an obstacle that had been overcome. That was when the idea came to me. It arrived fully formed, dropping into my consciousness like a gift from some dark corner of my mind I did not know existed. It was crazy. It was impossible. It was dangerous and cruel and exactly the kind of thing that would destroy all of us. It was perfect. Aaron and I were identical twins. Same face. Same voice. Same build. Same mannerisms and gestures and ways of moving through the world. We had spent our entire lives being confused for each other, being called by each other's names, having people unable to tell us apart without careful examination. The only difference was a small scar above my left eyebrow, a thin white line from a childhood fall I barely remembered. I had tripped running downstairs, hit my head on the corner of a table, needed 6 stitches. Aaron had been right behind me, had seen the whole thing, had escaped injury entirely. That scar was the only physical difference between us, and it was barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. What if I became him? What if I switched our lives and she did not even notice? What if I proved that to her, we were nothing but reflections of the same empty thing, that she had never actually loved either of us as individuals but only loved the idea of us, the concept of love without any real substance beneath it? It was insane. It was the kind of revenge that would destroy all of us, that would leave nothing but wreckage in its wake. But I did not care anymore. The part of me that cared about being good, about being moral, about taking the high road and being the bigger person, that part had died in that alley watching them kiss. What remained was something darker, something hungrier, something that wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to know she had never really seen either of us. I wanted her to realize that she had fallen in love with a face, a body, a mirror image that could be swapped and replaced without her ever noticing the difference. I wanted to destroy her certainty, her confidence, her belief that she knew what love was. I wanted her to hurt the way I hurt. And I was going to make it happen from the inside, wearing my brother's skin, living his life, proving that neither of us had ever mattered enough for her to tell the difference. It took 2 weeks to plan. 14 days of silent rage, cold calculation, and the kind of patience I never knew I possessed. 2 weeks to dismantle a life that looked so much like mine, yet felt nothing like what I had lost. Aaron's life was easy to infiltrate. Laughably easy. We had the same build, the same mannerisms carved into our bones by the same childhood. We shared memories like they were scripts we'd both memorized, word for word, breath for breath. All I had to do was become him. And he made it so effortlessly simple. Aaron was predictable in a way that made me sick. Gym at 6 in the morning, every morning, like clockwork. Work at 8, always 15 minutes early to impress people who didn't care. Drinks with Emily at 7, the same bar, the same booth, the same lies whispered across the same table. He didn't lock his phone. Didn't change his passwords. He thought he'd won. He thought I was gone, buried under the weight of my own heartbreak, too broken to stand back up. But broken things can be dangerous. Broken things have sharp edges. I started small. I hacked his email first, slipping past his laughable security like a ghost through walls. Then his social media, his bank accounts, his entire digital footprint. I learned his routines like they were prayers. His friends, shallow and interchangeable. His lies, so carefully constructed they almost looked like truth. And then, when I knew everything, when I could breathe his life like air, I made my move. I called him on a Thursday night. My voice was steady, almost gentle. I said I wanted to meet. To talk. To make peace. He agreed immediately. Of course he did. He thought he'd broken me. He thought I'd come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, for scraps of the life he'd stolen. We met at a bar downtown. Not the one he went to with Emily, but close enough. Dim lighting, dark wood, the kind of place where secrets felt safe. I bought him drinks. Expensive ones. Top-shelf whiskey that burned going down. We talked about nothing. About childhood games and forgotten jokes, about our parents and the way we used to share everything. He smiled. He laughed. He thought this was reconciliation. And when he went to the bathroom, when he stood up and walked away with that swagger he'd always had, I slipped something into his glass. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that would hurt him, not physically. Just enough to make him sleep. Just enough to give me time. He woke up 12 hours later in my apartment. Confused. Groggy. His eyes struggling to focus in the afternoon light. And by then, I was already gone. By then, I was already him. I wore his clothes, the designer shirts he loved so much, the cologne that smelled like arrogance and privilege. I drove his car, my hands steady on the wheel. I went to his apartment, the one with the view he'd bragged about, the one that was supposed to impress Emily. And when Emily opened the door, when she smiled that smile I used to think was only for me, when she kissed me like it was the most natural thing in the world, she didn't hesitate. She didn't question. She didn't pause. She didn't look into my eyes and see the difference. Because to her, I was Aaron. And Aaron was me. And neither of us mattered enough for her to tell the difference. I kissed her back and felt nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just a hollow, echoing emptiness where my heart used to be. She pulled me inside, talking about her day, about a new painting she'd started, about how much she'd missed me even though it had only been hours. Her voice was the same. Her touch was the same. Everything was exactly the same. And that was the proof I needed. That was the answer to the question that had been burning through me since the night I found them together. She never really knew me at all. That night, I lay beside her in his bed, in the darkness that smelled like him, and I stared at the ceiling. She curled against me, her breathing soft and even, her hand resting over my heart. And I wondered if she could feel the difference. If somewhere deep inside, some part of her knew. But she slept peacefully. She dreamed without nightmares. And I knew then that this would work. That I could live his life, and he could live mine, and she would never, ever know. Because love is supposed to recognize. Love is supposed to see. But Emily never looked close enough. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft at first, then harder, drumming against the windows like 1,000 small truths trying to break through. I listened to it and wondered what Aaron was doing right now. If he'd figured it out yet. If he'd tried to call her, only to find himself blocked, cut off, erased. I wondered if he felt even a fraction of what I'd felt. I hoped he did. Emily stirred beside me, mumbling something in her sleep. Something that sounded like my name. Or maybe his name. Maybe she couldn't tell the difference either. I closed my eyes and let the rain wash everything away. Tomorrow, I would wake up and be him completely. Tomorrow, I would live his life better than he ever did. And somewhere out there, in my smaller apartment with my harder job and my friends who actually cared, Aaron would be drowning. And I would watch. And I would wait. And I would finally feel like justice existed. Even if it looked like revenge. Living as Aaron was easier than I thought. Disturbingly easy. His job was simpler than mine, less demanding, more about appearances than actual work. His friends were shallow, their conversations empty calories, all surface and no substance. His life was a performance, carefully choreographed and endlessly rehearsed, and I'd been watching him perfect it my whole life. I knew every gesture. Every inflection. Every charming lie. Emily never suspected a thing. She kissed me the same way, her lips soft and familiar. She held me the same way, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin like she was reading Braille. She said, "I love you," the same way she used to say it to me, with that slight breathlessness, that little smile. And every time she did, I felt nothing. Not pain. Not pleasure. Just a vast, yawning emptiness where emotion used to live. But I played the part. I played it perfectly. I laughed at her jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. I complimented her paintings, standing in her studio with wine in hand, saying all the right things about color and composition. I took her to the same places Aaron used to, the expensive restaurants and gallery openings, the rooftop bars where the city glittered below like fallen stars. And she was happy. Genuinely happy. She said I seemed lighter. She said I seemed more present, more attentive, more like the man she'd always wanted me to be. She was falling in love with me all over again. With the version of her boyfriend I was pretending to be. And she didn't even know it. The irony was almost beautiful. Meanwhile, Aaron was living my life. And he hated every second of it. My job was harder, more demanding, requiring actual skill and dedication. My apartment was smaller, the walls thin, the neighbors loud. My friends actually cared about depth, about truth, about things that mattered beyond the surface. He tried to reach out to Emily. Of course he did. Desperate calls and frantic texts, messages that grew increasingly unhinged. She blocked him. She thought he was me. She thought I was him. And the more he tried to explain, tried to convince her of the truth, the crazier he sounded. I watched from the shadows as his life fell apart. As he lost his job for poor performance, unable to handle the work I'd been doing for years. As his friends, my real friends, grew concerned and then distant, confused by his sudden personality change. As he lost his sanity, piece by piece, day by day. And I felt nothing. No guilt. No regret. Just cold, quiet satisfaction. This was justice. This was proof. And I was going to let it play out until the very end. Emily and I fell into a routine. Morning coffee on her balcony, her bare feet tucked under her, the sun painting gold across her face. Evenings in her studio, me reading while she painted, the smell of turpentine and oils filling the air like incense. Nights tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender, her breath warm against my neck. She told me I was different. Better. She said whatever had changed in me, whatever shift had occurred, she loved it. She loved me more than she ever had. And I smiled and kissed her forehead and said nothing. Because how could I tell her the truth? That the man she was falling in love with was the man she'd betrayed? That I was the ghost she'd killed, wearing the skin of the man who helped her do it? One night, about 3 months in, she traced my face in the darkness. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, like she was sculpting me from memory. Sometimes I look at you, she whispered, and I see him. My heart stopped. See who? Your brother. The other one. The one I dated before you. She laughed softly. Isn't that strange? You're twins, but you always felt so different. But lately, sometimes, in certain lights, I see glimpses. Like you're carrying pieces of him. I held my breath. Waited. Wondered if this was the moment it all unraveled. But then she kissed me and said, I'm glad I chose you. I'm glad I chose the better brother. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like ash. I got up and went to the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Aaron's clothes. Aaron's haircut. Aaron's life. But my eyes. Always my eyes. And I wondered what Emily saw when she looked at me. If she saw anyone at all. Or just the space where someone should be. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I knew who it was. Please. Please just tell her the truth. Tell her who you really are. I can't do this anymore. I can't live your life. Please. I deleted it without responding. Blocked the number. Watched it disappear like it never existed. Outside Emily's apartment, the city hummed with life. Cars and voices and music bleeding together into white noise. Somewhere out there, Aaron was falling apart. Somewhere out there, my old life was collapsing without me. And here, in this stolen life, I was succeeding. Thriving. Becoming everything he used to be, only better. More attentive. More present. More real. The cruelest part? Emily was right. I was the better brother. I always had been. She just hadn't noticed until I became him. I went back to bed. Curled around her sleeping form. Breathed in the scent of her hair. And somewhere in the darkness, I felt the first crack in my carefully constructed armor. Not guilt. Not yet. But something close to it. Something that felt almost like regret. I pushed it away. Buried it deep. Because this wasn't about love anymore. This was about proof. About showing her, showing him, showing myself that none of it had ever been real. And I wasn't done proving it yet. It lasted 6 months. 6 months of me being Aaron, of living inside his skin like it was a costume I could never take off. 6 months of her not noticing, not questioning, not seeing. But then, slowly, like ice cracking under pressure, the fissures began to show. She started asking questions. Small ones at first, easy to dismiss. Why do you fold your shirts differently now? She asked one morning, watching me from the bed, her head tilted in that curious way she had. You used to just throw them in the drawer. I shrugged. Trying to be more organized, I guess. When did you stop drinking whiskey? She asked another night at dinner, eyeing my wine glass. You always said wine was pretentious. People change, I said, keeping my voice light. Maybe I'm becoming pretentious. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. When did you start reading poetry? She asked, finding the book on her nightstand, my bookmark halfway through. She opened it, reading the underlined passages, her lips moving silently. I don't know, I said. Recently, I guess. Does it matter? No, she said softly. It's just different. You're different. I deflected. I lied. I said I was trying new things, exploring interests I'd suppressed, becoming a better version of myself. She believed me. She wanted to believe me. But I could see the doubt creeping in like fog, subtle and pervasive. The way she looked at me a little longer now, her eyes searching. The way she touched my face like she was trying to memorize features she thought she already knew. The way she paused before saying my name, like she had to remind herself who I was. Or who I was supposed to be. And then one night, she found the ring. The one I never gave her. I'd kept it all this time, hidden in the inner pocket of my jacket, the one I wore sometimes without thinking. And she pulled it out while doing laundry, her hands suddenly still, her face going pale. What is this? She asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. I was sitting on the couch, reading, and the question hit me like cold water. I looked up and saw her standing there, holding the small velvet box, her fingers trembling. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My mind raced through possibilities, excuses, explanations. But none of them felt right. None of them would work. Aaron, she said, and the name felt like a blade. What is this? It's nothing, I finally said. The lie tasted bitter. It's not nothing. She opened the box. The ring caught the light, the diamond I'd chosen so carefully, the one I'd imagined sliding onto her finger when I still believed in us. This is an engagement ring. I stood up. Walked toward her. It's old. Something I bought a long time ago. For who? For you. I mean, I was thinking about it. About proposing. But then I changed my mind. It doesn't mean anything now. She stared at me like I was a stranger. You never told me you were thinking about marriage. Not once. You always said you weren't ready. You said marriage was a trap, remember? You joked about it constantly. My blood went cold. Because she was right. Aaron had said those things. Aaron had meant them. But I hadn't. I'd wanted to marry her. I'd dreamed of it. People change, I repeated, but the words sounded hollow. When did you buy this? She pressed. When? I couldn't answer. Because the truth was impossible. Because I'd bought it before. Before Aaron. Before the betrayal. Before everything shattered. It doesn't matter, I said. It matters to me. Her voice broke. Everything you're doing, everything you're saying, it's like you're a different person. And I don't know if I'm going crazy or if something's actually wrong. She started pulling away after that. Slowly at first, then faster, like water draining from a sink. She stopped saying, I love you before bed. She stopped touching me casually, those small gestures of affection that used to be unconscious. She started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, curled away from me, building walls in her sleep. And I knew. I knew it was almost over. I knew the truth was coming, rising up like something buried too shallow, too close to the surface. Part of me wanted to confess. To end it myself, on my terms. To watch her face when she realized what I'd done, what she'd failed to see. But another part of me, the part that still hurt, that still bled, wanted her to figure it out herself. To feel the horror of recognition. To understand just how blind she'd been. One evening, about 2 weeks after she found the ring, we sat in her living room. The same couch where I'd found her with Aaron half a year ago. The same spot where my world had ended. She was across from me, not beside me, her arms wrapped around herself. I think we need to talk, she said. About what? About us. About what's happening. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. Real, genuine fear. Something's wrong. And I can't ignore it anymore. The rain started then. Of course it did. Rain always came at the worst moments, like the world knew when drama needed a soundtrack. It tapped against the windows, gentle at first, then harder, more insistent. Nothing's wrong, I said, but my voice betrayed me. It cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. Look at me, she demanded. Look at me and tell me you're who you say you are. I looked at her. And for the first time in 6 months, I let her see. Not everything. But enough. Enough of the pain. Enough of the truth lurking beneath. Her breath caught. Oh my God. Emily. You're not him. Her voice was barely audible. You're not Aaron. I didn't answer. I just held her gaze. Watched as everything she thought she knew crumbled like ash. How long? She whispered. The rain pounded harder. Thunder rolled in the distance. And somewhere between the storm and her breaking heart, I found my voice. Long enough. She figured it out on a Sunday. We were sitting in her apartment, the same couch where I'd found her with Aaron 7 months ago, and she was staring at me like I was a ghost. Like I was something impossible that shouldn't exist. You're not him, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile as glass. You're not Aaron. I didn't deny it. There was no point anymore. The charade was over. The curtain was falling. I just smiled. A slow, sad smile that felt like surrender. Took you long enough. Her face went white. All the color drained from her cheeks, her lips, leaving her looking almost translucent. What are you talking about? I'm not Aaron, Emily. I'm me. I've been me this whole time. She stood up. Backed away like I was dangerous. Like I might hurt her. No, that's not possible. That's not. It's very possible. We're twins, remember? Same face. Same voice. Same DNA. Same everything. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You didn't notice because you never really looked. You never actually saw him. Or me. You just saw what you wanted to see. You're lying. But her voice wavered. She was already believing it. Already piecing together all the small inconsistencies, all the tiny moments that hadn't quite fit. I'm not lying. For once in this whole mess, I'm telling you the complete truth. I stood up, slowly, keeping my distance. We switched places. 6 months ago. Well, I switched us. Aaron didn't exactly consent. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this? Because you did it first. The anger I'd been holding back for so long finally rose to the surface, hot and bitter. You betrayed me. You chose him. You destroyed everything we had, everything I thought we were, and you didn't even care. So I wanted to prove something. Prove what? She was crying now. Not out of sadness. Out of anger. Out of humiliation. Out of the horrifying realization of what had been done to her. What she'd done to herself. I wanted to prove that you never loved him. You never loved me. You just loved the idea of us. The fantasy. The concept. I took a step closer. And you couldn't even tell the difference between us. For 6 months, Emily. 6 months I've been living his life, sleeping in his bed, kissing you with his face, and you never once questioned it. You never once knew. She slapped me. Hard. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. My cheek burned, my head snapped to the side, and I let it happen. I deserved it. We both did. You're insane, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You're absolutely insane. Maybe. I turned back to face her, touching my burning cheek. But I'm not a liar. Not anymore. You are. You're the one who pretended to love me while sleeping with my brother. You're the one who couldn't even tell when I became him. What does that say about you, Emily? What does that say about what we had? Get out. Her whole body was trembling. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. Gladly. I walked toward the door, then stopped. Turned back one last time. Do you want to know the saddest part? You said I was different. You said I was better. More attentive. More present. More like the man you always wanted. I laughed, but it was hollow. You fell in love with me all over again, Emily. You just didn't realize it was me. That's not true, isn't it? Think about the last 6 months. Think about how happy you were. How you said I'd changed. How everything felt right for the first time. I could see the truth hitting her, the realization spreading across her face like poison. You loved me, Emily. You just needed me to look like him first. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I hate me too. I opened the door. The hallway was dark, empty. But at least now you know. At least now you understand what you threw away. What you never actually had. What about Aaron? Where is he? Living my life. Badly. I shrugged. He lost my job. My apartment. My friends. Turns out being me is harder than it looks. Turns out my life required more than charm and a trust fund. You destroyed him. No, Emily. We destroyed each other. I just made sure you were part of the wreckage. She told me to leave again, her voice breaking. I did. I walked out of that apartment for the last time, down the stairs I'd climbed 100 times, past the doorman who nodded without knowing anything was wrong. Outside, it was raining. Of course it was raining. The city was grey and wet and cold, and I stood there for a moment, letting the water soak through my clothes, Aaron's clothes, the costume I could finally take off. My phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. He'd figured out what happened. He was threatening legal action, threatening violence, threatening everything he could think of. I deleted it without responding. None of it mattered anymore. I'd proven what I needed to prove. I'd shown her the truth about herself, about us, about love that was never really love at all. And now, standing in the rain with nowhere to go and no one to be, I finally felt something other than emptiness. I felt free. Broken, ruined, destroyed. But free. I started walking. Away from her building. Away from the life I'd stolen. Away from everything that had defined me for too long. And somewhere in the rain and the darkness, I began to disappear. Not as Aaron. Not as the man I used to be. Just as myself. Whoever that was anymore. 6 months later, I'm living my own life again. A real one. Far from Emily, far from Aaron, far from the city where everything fell apart. Far from the people who thought I was replaceable, interchangeable, invisible. I moved west. To a place where nobody knows my name or my face or my story. Where I can be just another stranger among strangers. I got a new job, nothing glamorous, but honest work that doesn't require me to pretend to be someone I'm not. I have a small apartment with windows that face the ocean. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of waves, and it feels like absolution. Aaron's still trying to rebuild. I hear about it sometimes through mutual connections, people who don't know the full story. He lost everything. His job, his reputation, his sense of self. His confidence shattered like glass. He blames me. Of course he does. But he should blame himself. He should blame the choice he made when he decided my happiness was worth less than his desire. He lives alone now. Works a job he hates. Sees a therapist twice a week. And sometimes, late at night, he calls me. I never answer. But I listen to the voicemails. His voice, so much like mine, broken in ways I used to be broken. I'm sorry, he says. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it would hurt you this much. I didn't know it would destroy everything. I delete them without responding. Because sorry doesn't rebuild what was burned. Sorry doesn't erase 6 months of living a lie. Sorry is just a word people say when they finally face consequences. Emily tried to reach out once. She sent a letter. Old-fashioned, handwritten on cream-colored paper that smelled faintly of her perfume. It came 3 months after the reveal, forwarded through channels I didn't know she had access to. I can't stop thinking about what you said, she wrote. About how I fell in love with you again without knowing it was you. I've been in therapy. Trying to understand why I couldn't see you. Why I needed you to be him before I could appreciate what we had. She said she was sorry. She said she missed me. Not Aaron. Me. She said she understood now what she'd thrown away, what she'd been too blind to value when she had it. You were always the better brother, she wrote. You were always the one I should have chosen. And I did choose you. I just didn't realize it until you showed me the truth. But by then, it didn't matter. She'd already shown me who she was. She'd already proven that her love was conditional, surface level, dependent on the right packaging. And I'd already learned to live without her. I don't hate her anymore. I don't hate him. I just don't care. The anger burned itself out somewhere between the reveal and the moving truck. Now there's just emptiness where they used to be. And slowly, quietly, I'm filling that emptiness with new things. New friends who know the real me. New places that hold no memories of her. New routines that belong only to myself. Because I learned something those 6 months. Something valuable hidden in all the deception and pain. I learned that love isn't about recognition. It's about being seen. Really seen. Not the surface, not the performance, but the truth underneath. The messy, complicated, imperfect truth of who someone actually is. And Emily never saw me. She never saw him either. She saw a reflection. A fantasy. An idea of what she wanted us to be. And when I switched places, when I became the mirror showing her exactly what she'd been doing all along, she proved it. She loved the concept of love. Not the person. never the person. People ask me sometimes if it was worth it. The few people I've told, the ones I trust with the whole ugly story. They ask if the revenge, the pain, the months of pretending were worth the destruction left behind. And I tell them the truth. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was a lesson. For her. For him. For me. A brutal, painful lesson about the difference between being loved and being seen. About the hollow echo of shallow affection. About what it means to be truly known by another person. And now, I'm free. Free from the need to be chosen. Free from the need to be enough. Free from measuring my worth by whether someone who couldn't even tell me apart from my twin brother decided I deserved love. Because I finally learned the most important thing. The one truth that makes all the rest bearable. I was always enough. She just wasn't looking. I stand on my balcony sometimes, watching the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that feel like redemption. And I think about the person I used to be. The one who loved so completely, so destructively. The one who thought being chosen was the same as being valued. I miss him sometimes. That naive, hopeful version of myself. But I don't want to be him again. Because now I know better. Now I know that the right person won't need me to wear someone else's face. Won't need me to be anyone other than exactly who I am. Won't love me more when I'm pretending to be my brother. The right person will see me from the beginning. And won't need a lesson to learn my worth. Somewhere out there, Emily is learning to live with what she did. What we did to each other. And Aaron is learning that being loved for your face isn't the same as being loved for your soul. And here, in this new life I've built from wreckage and ruins, I'm learning something different. I'm learning how to love myself enough that nobody else's blindness can destroy me again. The ocean keeps rolling in. The sun keeps setting. And I keep breathing. Keep existing. Keep becoming something new. Not the brother who was betrayed. Not the man who stole a life out of vengeance. Just myself. Finally, terrifyingly, beautifully myself. And that, I'm realizing slowly, is enough.